So I thought I would try to restore this pitch, which was pretty bad. So much stuff had been spilt in it, and the stem had snapped. So I had another pitch, and I thought I would swap them over, and while I was at it, I would give everything a good clean. I've done this once before, so I kind of knew what to expect, and it went okay. The only thing that you have to be careful of is lifting the pads when you desolder. I didn't have my needle nose pliers, so I cut the PCB on this, but it was an experiment, so it didn't really matter. So yeah, it's lifting the pads when you're desoldering, and being careful when you twist the legs so that you can pop them out. They're the biggest problems at this part anyway. So once that's come off, we can then look at just cleaning all that rubbish off the PCB. So I tried the PCB cleaner, it wasn't really working with paper towels. I moved on to some IPA and used the microfiber cloth. That still wasn't so good, so then I ended up just using some basic cleaning spray and then cleaned it again afterwards, and that did the trick. So that was good. And now I'm going to use some deoxit just to clean the pot for the center trim. So there we go. So now we're going to remove the PCB from the metalwork, and you want to put it in the vise so that when you bend the pins back, you're not deforming the shape of the metal. It'll keep it nice and straight. It's very important, otherwise you'll just bend the whole thing out and you just won't get it to go back together again properly. So be very careful of that. There's nothing else really that can go wrong, as long as the whole thing doesn't fall out from underneath when you pop that last one. So now we're going to clean the actual tracks on the PCB. And when you pop this out, be very careful of the spring and the ball bearing, because you'll lose it. So you can see all the crud that was on this PCB. So again, we're going to use the PCB cleaning spray just to clean it up first. And then when it's cleaned, we're going to protect it with the fader lube, which is amazing stuff. It's great for lubricating faders, amazingly. So I didn't know really what else to use to spread this on. I didn't want to use a cloth so that I leave residue. Maybe the finger was okay. Seems to work afterwards. So then we're going to do the same thing with the metalwork. We're just going to clean it inside, make sure there's no bits in it, and then we're going to lubricate the inside with the fader lube again so that it moves nice and smoothly. Basically, that fader lube is designed to do metal on plastic, so it's basically what it's made for. So we just put it on all the surfaces where it's going to make contact with the metal and the plastic. So now we're going to clean the actual slider, and you can see the brushes on the bottom. The brushes on the bottom are the part that actually makes contact with those tracks. So I'm just going to wipe all the rubbish off of this, make sure that the brushes are straight and that they're all sitting at the right angle. The most important part of this is not losing that spring. If you lose the spring in the bearing, you won't find it. And I actually lost the spring at the end of this. Thankfully, I had the one from the other fader that was really, really bad. But yeah, so as I put this down, I edited it the bit out where it got lost. So now I'm just going to do the reverse. Make sure that you hold the bearing and the spring with your fingers and push it back in, and you know which way to go because of the click on the side of the metalwork. So then we just place the PCB on the back, put it back in the vise, and again clamp it in the vise so that we don't bend the metalwork as we fold it over. Don't push it down too tight or you will push the PCB down and then the slider won't work very well. So just flip it over, do the last two parts. I'm just holding it so that I hold the PCB level while we're pushing that back down. So there we go. It feels nice and smooth as it's moved. So now we're going to put the fader back onto the board. Just pop those legs in and reapply the solder. It's dead straightforward. If you haven't cleaned the solder pads out before, you can just use some solder braid. Just clean those pads, then it'll pop back in nicely. And then the last thing is pop the metalwork back on the top. The little PCB for the LED. And then a new green LED. Long leg goes to the outside of the PCB. And then just solder that. Trim the legs. And now we're just going to make sure that the pitch is set up according to the service manual. So when it's in the center, we should be reading 2.9K. So if we use the brown and the red connections at the top, we will get a reading. So we can see this is way off, but I did just tweak it when I was cleaning the potentiometer. So we're just going to twist that around until it shows 2.9K, and then we know that that is now set back to factory standards. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you have to rely on the dots, adjust the dots so that they're stationary, then read the brown and the red wires to see what it should be, put the click to the center, and then adjust the potentiometer to match those readings. I don't know if that's something to do with the component on the main board, which is now out of spec, but I found that that's the best way to do it. So we're nearly there. 2.9K, as close as I can get it, and then test the motion of the fader. Make sure that there's no massive jumps or spikes or dead spots, and that's looking nice and smooth. So there we go, we've put our fader back together. Unfortunately, I don't have a deck with that particular style of connector, so I couldn't test it, but it was a good experiment and I learned plenty along the way, so I feel comfortable that I could do this another time. So thanks for watching and I hope you've enjoyed it.